All right. Welcome back to the Live Ultralight podcast powered by Outdoor Vitals. Today we have a trip recap and a new special guest appearance from Ty. So on this episode, we're just going to be going over a recent trip that we did. I mean, typically on this podcast, we're going over all things ultralight backpacking and or gear design, since we design a lot of gear and love to talk about the technical details of that. But today we're going to be recapping a trip and just talking about some of the fun things, some of the less than fun things, some things we learned about a trip that we did down into the greater, we'll call it Grand Canyon area. Went down there. I mean, I guess when we were there, we might have just been ticking over into March. So, winter-esque, but we've had a really, really dry year. So really just a desert hike in a very, very remote area. So there's kind of the context, but let's introduce you to who came on the trip. Obviously, we got Brigham here. Came on the trip with us. You guys all know Brigham, but we've also got Ty. So Ty, give us a little bit of a backstory on your role here and also your backpacking experience prior to this.
Oh, boy. Well, I'm the warehouse manager, and so I run everything around products, shipping it out to customers and everything like that. As far as experience goes, I'm really not very experienced. I'm very much a novice, and I learned it this trip. I've gone out just for normal like day hikes and just overnights, but besides hunting, it's usually just quick little trips.
Yeah, Ty also was nursing along a ankle injury that he was running and got ran off the road and injured his ankle by a driver, and he also didn't get the full itinerary per se of this trip that we learned as we got out there. So, anyways, so before we left for the trip, I happened to see large packages of like dude wipes in Ty's backpack. So, I started to go through some of his pack, and we dropped a few pounds worth of just wipes out of his pack, along with a few other things. So we thought we lightened up his pack a little bit for him. But experience is the best teacher, right? So I'm not going to pack everything for you, but we also know that Ty drinks a lot of fluid throughout the day. Typically, how much fluid total do you think you drink a day?
Realistically, like 2.5 to 3 gallons of water.
Yeah, so we've offered to pay for him to go to a doctor and see what's going on, but he doesn't want to. He loves drinking, and I think he likes his bathroom breaks. He likes that every 5 minutes he gets to go to the bathroom. So it's we're not sure. Yeah, 15. We're not sure what's going on there, but there's just a little more context. But Brigham, you want to walk us through kind of the I mean, technically you were the planner of the trip, so walk us through what the trip was and what we were expecting going into it.
Yeah, well, we wanted to do a 2-night trip. A lot of our kind of monthly trips are usually like a 1-night trip. We had some gear that we needed to test, just get a little bit extra testing in. We still do. So wanted to make it a 2-night trip. A little bit wanted it to be more adventurous. It is, at the time, it was late February, so although we'd had a really dry and almost precipitation-free winter thus far, you never know. So we chose to go more towards the desert, just so we could cover the miles and have a fun, adventurous loop without being confined or restricted by the slow pace of snow travel. So, when it's a 2-night trip, you've got basically 3 days of hiking to fill up, and which is a great opportunity. So wanted to do something that would require, 10 to 20 miles a day of hiking, and so not too far from us, like 2.5-ish hours from us, we can get into the greater Grand Canyon area. Technically, if we continued hiking up, 10 more miles a certain direction, we would have entered the boundaries of the Grand Canyon National Park. But so that's kind of the terrain description, is that just think lower levels of the Grand Canyon, dry desert, lots of mesas and rock sandstone, very little water availability. And, again, it's even in February, the Grand Canyon, pretty stable at the bottom, but the mid to upper elevations, they can be freezing cold with a lot of snow, or they can be like pretty mild, and so it ended up being very spring-like conditions. I would say it was probably 60 degrees in the day. The overnight lows were 40. So
yeah, and we were the route that we'd planned, we were going off. There's really just not much information, and so I actually talked to someone who frequents this area, and we were going to do an out and back, and they said, "Don't do an out and back, do this loop." And so we weren't fully aware of how everything would go as far as mileage and trail conditions and things of that nature. So we originally thought we would be hiking a little over 30 miles, about maybe 34. But then when we actually looked at the loop, in some ways I thought, well, maybe we'll be more like 30 or 32 miles. But that wasn't exactly what transpired. So as we're driving down there, Ty had only come on one previous trip, and it was a very low key, like 3-4 mile hike in. We hung out and ate and played dice games and stuff and camp at night. And so he didn't quite know that this trip was going to require more mileage. And he'd asked us the day prior, like, well, how much water should we take? I'm like, well, we're taking 1 day's worth of water. So for me and Brigham, that was 3 to 4 liters of water. And I think Ty showed up at the trail with 7.
Yep.
So he had at least another 6 pounds of water minimum over us to start the trail. But we wanted to get some mileage done. We were hoping we could get about 10 done or hike towards dark the first day, but we weren't able to start the trail until about 1 o'clock because it is a couple hour drive down there. So we started the trail around 1 o'clock after doing 30 plus miles on a dirt road. And yeah, I mean, it was, I guess my initial experience of the area was, this is some remote area.
Yeah, I mean, it's very remote, desolate terrain. I think it'd be actually kind of cool. I wonder if we could get like a BLM ranger or someone from the BLM onto the podcast and talk about like that specific area. Mm-hmm. It'd be kind of cool, because the question we talked about it while we were hiking along is like, man, so the trails some of them are like pretty consistent, and then some of them are really spotty. You're really relying on a couple cairns here and there to really wayfind, and so it's not a high traffic area by any means. It's, what'd you say, 30 miles on a BLM road, but then you enter a BLM wilderness, which means it's non-motorized, and it's just so remote that there's definitely a feeling that like not many people go out there, although you see signs that are surprising, but of, people. But we didn't encounter a single person. But
when we left the truck, there is a little trailhead thing there. Mm-hmm. And I opened it up to sign in. Oh, yeah. Only one person this year had signed into it. So that's 2 full months into the year. And they had gone a half a mile in to the spring and turned around and came out. So that's all the traffic. So, I mean, as long as people were signing in that went in there. And my friend who goes in there quite a bit, he's like, yeah, there's almost no information in there. So I had to buy a physical book of canyoneering, and that's where I've learned almost everything about the area. So it's really, really remote. And if you're watching this on YouTube, or I think we can do this on Spotify. I need to double check if we're actually doing that already. We'll put some like B-roll footage, just some clips of the area in there. I may do a YouTube video on a smaller topic, but I kind of want to keep, in some ways selfishly, this area like less talked about. So if you're listening to the podcast, you're going to get some information. On YouTube, you may not hear much about me talking about this area, because to me, like, I had a feeling going in there of just like, it felt so remote that I was like, this is one area I'd love to just stay remote. And the thing about that, though, is it's remote for a reason. It's not convenient to get there.
Yeah.
It's not convenient to navigate. Certain times of year, you would never want to be in there for water and heat reasons. So it'll stay remote for those reasons. I mean, there's a reason it's already remote and not as traveled. But yeah, I mean, we didn't really see footprints until we were almost as far away from the truck as we could get where they're coming or people were coming in from the other side. But we're probably skipping ahead. But yeah, I mean, I would love to know the backstory. There's Indian artifacts in here. There's all sorts of history. Just really, really cool. But I mean, as we're hiking in, you're getting those Grand Canyon vibes right away. Massive, massive plateaus on either side, and we're just walking down into that canyon. I guess any other thoughts on like the first part of day one, or at least starting off the trail? Any expectations or anything else to preface what we're about to head into?
I mean, the start of it, the trail was awesome. It was easy. I was like, oh, this is the typical what it's going to be like. Yeah. It's like, this is going to be easy. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
That's how we lure you in. So we get down to the bottom where we intersect with kind of the main canyon of the area. And just to give you an idea of the remoteness of this, we searched for probably, I searched for maybe 10 minutes. These guys they went some different directions trying to find a trail that cut up an hour.
I just sat there. I sat there in the middle while he went around and you went that way. I was not going to go up until I knew which way was right.
But the canyons are so steep in there that you have to know where you can get up and out of canyons. Because I mean, it's basically Slot Canyon, at least south of us, or like from where we were at. And to get up out of the canyon we were at, you could probably have scrambled a couple of places, like crawling and climbing. But there was one spot that you could get out, and I mean, it just wasn't easy to find. Like, it was behind the one spot of like vegetation in there. It's kind of tucked up behind there. So anyways, I got up there and it was just this really cool trail that it would like, you get up on one little plateau, not even a plateau, like a shelf, and then it would cut like 100, 200 yards to the side, and then you'd cut up to the next level. You'd cut a couple hundred yards back, and then you'd cut up another level. So you're just kind of zigzagging up these really cool shelves. But these guys eventually found it. I tried to go find them, but they had cut back underneath me and I couldn't see them. And I'm like, man, I hope they came back. I think I'd at least told Brigham that I kind of called back to him when I very first found the first cairn. But that section of the hike was really, for the next 5+ miles, it was just looking for cairns. Like, we were just looking for rock stacks, trying to see where to go to get up and out of there. But really, really beautiful section of the hike, really cool. I really enjoyed that climb out. It was just, I don't know what it was about it, but it felt really backcountry, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
There wasn't really anything built on the trail to improve it. It was just wayfinding your way up this face. So caught up on top of there. And then we started to basically cover, we're basically going from one canyon to the next canyon where we were hoping there was a spring, but we wouldn't get to that next canyon until the next day. So we hiked up across, I don't know what you'd call that. It's not really a shelf at that point. It's much bigger than that. But we were basically cutting across from one canyon to another on a small trail up there. Really pretty. I mean, conditions, like nothing better to hike in temperature wise at that point in the day until we got to camp. And then all of a sudden the wind picked up drastically just in time for us to be putting up our shelters. So Ty had a little bit more fun. This is only his second time or so setting up a Fortius tent, which happened to we have a gear share program here where employees can grab gear that they don't need or want to own. And so Ty grabbed a tent out of there. It happened to be a prototype of the original Fortius. And you never know what you're going to get in those gear share programs. You might get a broken stake. You might get, it's kind of a run at your own risk thing sometimes. But you had a lot of fun. I mean, we both did. I came over and helped you, and we had some fun setting up that tent in the wind.
Oh yeah, it was an adventure for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. We had some crazy wind, and then also you're trying to get them in a place where you've got, space with rocks and bushes and everything up there is so sharp. There's cactus everywhere, so you're trying to mind all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, we got the tent set up, and again, just lots and lots of wind. We were actually wanting to do a podcast while we were out there on trail, but by the time we got into camp, we'd hiked 10 miles. And the wind was so rough that it wouldn't have been any fun. So
Yeah, wouldn't have worked well.
we pushed it off a day. And I mean, any other thoughts on day one or night one?
It was a really, I mean, despite the wind, and once we were settled in, and it was a pretty relaxing night, just sitting out there. I mean, the starlight was incredible. I mean, again, when you're that remote, there's no light pollution to speak of at all. And so it was a clear night, like very clear night. So beautiful stargazing opportunity. And, it was, the wind definitely made it a lot colder than it actually was, but I thought it was a pretty enjoyable night sitting out there.
Yeah, we didn't stay out too long. I don't know. I think we hit 9 o'clock maybe. And we're like, all right, let's go into our tents. So we had a very long night in the tents, but I slept so good. We had we got up at 7 the next morning. So we were in the tents a long time, 10 hours. And I'm sure I slept 9 of them. So it was definitely a good night for me. I don't know how the rest
It was one of my better nights of sleep I've had in a while. So yeah, I slept great.
Mine was a little bit of an adventure. I found the spot where all the sand just collected in my tent. So I got to eat sand for a good amount of the night until I had to find a new sleeping position. But I will say, right before the trip, I decided to try out a Nebo because I always hear Brigham talking about how much of a difference that makes, and it's so little ounce. And that is the best thing I could have brought on this trip because that saved me a ton.
Yeah, definitely an underutilized piece, and where we were having so much wind, but it's still like a warm, not like a warm wind, but not a really cold situation. Mm-hmm. Nebos are money for sure. So we get through that night, get up the next morning, like I say, around 7, tried to break camp around 8. We were a little slow on that, but knew we had a big day, and we kind of had looked at some of the mapping. I needed to get back into town relatively early on Friday afternoon, if possible. So we had kind of a deadline that we were trying to work with. As we looked at it, we're like, tomorrow might be a 20-mile day. It might be a 20-mile day. And so we wanted to get an early start on the day, and we did. Water-wise, I think we were all in a good spot, but we weren't, pardon the dog here. We weren't, I was like slightly rationing, I guess is how I'd put it. I wasn't rationing, but like, again, we were going to be, we were expecting to be on 15 plus miles before we got to that first water source. I think we're all doing well on water at that point. Started off the day really, really, really pretty. Again, still crazy remote, and hiked until we got over to an area where we started to look for a spring. The first spot we looked for the spring, there was no spring, and so I started a little more concerned there because I was really expecting the spring to be there, and had drank pretty much all my water at that point. Thankfully, we started to go down that canyon the way that we thought we would be able to continue the trip, and we found a spring.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. For that first canyon we went down towards the spring, mm-hmm. That was the one where that guy had told you could go down. I'm trying to remember because there didn't show a trail down there, right? On the map, I don't remember seeing a trail.
Neither canyon did, but I had told him, we're going to go to Mountain Sheep Spring.
Yeah.
And he's like, then just loop it. So he hadn't actually said to go down that canyon per se.
Oh.
But I had showed him, I was like, we're going to go across Ranger Trail. He's like, okay, just loop back. So I think I'd kind of made a partial assumption that we should, because I hadn't specifically.
Yeah, like as educated guess that we could probably, I got it.
Yeah, so we went down that canyon a little bit farther, found a beautiful spring.
Great spring.
Ty really cameled up with water, going back to his 7 liters of capacity.
I have a secret to tell you. I filled up my platypus, so it was actually 8.
Okay, but
to make sure.
Up until that point, from the time we left the truck to got to that spring, how much water had you consumed?
By the time I got to the spring, I was down to my last 1.5 liters. So 5.5 liters.
That's insane.
Notice how he says his last 1.5 liters.
Right.
Most people listening are like, I only carry 1.5 liters. What do you mean your last 1.5 liters?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, you consumed like 5.5 liters of water at that point. I'd consumed 4. Brigham, I think, was right in that ballpark. Apparently, Ty Camel's up with a full 8 liters of water. Me and Brigham, I mean, I filled up basically 4. I had my dog on the hike, and so I put like kind of a partial 0.5 liter in her. So I had about 3.5 liters, and I drank a full liter sitting there while we had our lunch and ate. So, but I knew that we would likely be hitting some water. I knew one spot for sure we'd be hitting water. So I just knew that I had to get through the rest of that day was all before we hit water the next day. Anyway, so from there, we started dropping down that canyon, and we got cliffed out. There was a precarious way down the canyon where you could scramble down a very narrow shelf and get to a ladder and then climb down the rest of the canyon. It was a stretch, and we didn't really have cordage to drop our packs down. And yeah, we decided that we were not going to take that route. And that was a determining factor in the trip and in the day, I would say. Because what that meant is that we had to hike a little bit back up the canyon, kind of wayfind our way up to a trail that cut from the canyon we were in to another canyon that we knew we could get down and hike out. So I must have confirmed with that guy that was a common thing from mountain sheep spraying down.
Follow that trail up to that half
canyon. This one would work, but I knew the other one would work.
Yeah.
So that added probably 4 or more miles to the trip, at least an hour and a half, if not more, of hiking, because we ended up having to scramble and kind of wayfind our way up these cliffs and shelves to get back up to the trail. Then once we hit the trail, we had to cut, 2-3 miles over and then go back down and then hike another mile back down. So might have been, because we don't know how hard it would have been to get from where we were all the way out. It might have added 3 or 4 miles to the day, but that was, I always hate those situations. You have it in your mind where you're like, all right, we're going to get down this canyon right here. It'll be good. There was kind of a trail in there, so it felt like it was going to go. But when you're ever like in a situation where you have to add miles unexpectedly, I feel like it does something mentally. So that part of the day was like kind of I feel like, I don't know about you guys, but I kind of just like locked in. I put on some music and just kind of like, all right, let's get these next 3-4 miles done. And we picked up, I would say we picked up our pace at that point, knowing that we'd added 4 miles to the trip and that we needed to cover more miles to get to a position where we could get back to the truck at about 11 o'clock on the following day. We saw, random aspect of this. I don't want to skip over. We saw a really cool looking frog. One of the only,
I've never seen anything like
the
that.
only wildlife we saw of this whole trip was a metallic looking frog. I did talk to my buddy after. Apparently, most of the frogs in Grand Canyon look like that, and he doesn't know why.
Yeah.
I thought I was seeing like an endangered species. Like it was just the most bizarre looking frog. I almost stepped on it. I was laying on this rock and it was like totally camouflaged in, which color changing is interesting, but turning your skin metallic was a whole different ball game.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like it really looked like somebody had spray painted the frog with like just a rattle can of like sparkly gold or bronze spray paint. That's what it looked like, because it had a shimmer to it, like it reflected light. It was crazy. Very cool though.
It was definitely tough. It was definitely interesting. The tough part here, how was your ankle doing at this point? Especially after we had to scramble up and out of that canyon.
Oh yeah, it's after the first little scramble, I was like, okay, I think I need some like a little bit of ibuprofen and I'll be fine. And then I kept seeing what it was really getting to. And by the time we made it to the top, I was like, I think I might have to just go back the way we came. Like, I don't know if I can go another, 12 miles today and then 10 miles tomorrow. Because it was just getting really sensitive and everything.
When were you going to have that conversation with us?
Oh, I wasn't. Look, here's good.
You're going to turn around and disappear and not say anything?
I was just like, you know what? Worst case scenario, they'll find me at the truck. Like, they'll know I'll be fine. It's fine. And I should add, I didn't exactly come prepared because I didn't know the maps or anything to download for this hike. And that was my bad. And so I was just going off of, Google Maps and was just about to find my way back to where we started.
That's why on your watch, and you do the breadcrumbs. Apparently, if you come with us, then you can at least breadcrumb your way back out of the area. Oh, so we cut over. I would say it was about that time of day after that scramble. Actually, it wasn't even that. It was once we started to go downhill, your pace started to slow. It seemed like that was really what triggered your ankle to hurt was the downhill side. But we come down this really cool trail that like starts by going through this like crack, and then they work in these switchbacks. And this area, they had improved the trail. So they stacked rocks and things to make it passable, or I guess more safe to pass will be my guess, is that it probably made it through before, but now was, an actual 2-foot wide trail at least. Wound our way down to the bottom, and this was the first time that I had this experience on trail. I'd mentioned that I had brought my dog on the trip, and her pack had broken. I had a very cheap pack that held maybe a liter's worth of items on each side of this pack, and the webbing had come unstitched on it. So I got to pull out the trusty first aid kit, pull out the sewing kit, and sew that pack so it could finish the trail, which was good. I've carried a very ultralight sew kit for years now, 3-4 years at least, and that was the first time I ever actually had to pull it out. So learned really quick that I could probably use 10 minutes of sewing lessons on YouTube would have probably been helpful, but the pack held together and made it through the rest of the trip. But it was I guess a good test of the first aid kit. In fact, I need to go through my first aid kit and replenish some things. I used some stitching. I guess I didn't have to replenish that, but I gave you some cord. I gave Ty something out of, I can't even remember now, tape and alcohol wipes, because we'll get there. Anyways, these guys went a little bit ahead, but we ended up just going down this trail. At this point, we hit into a spring, and there was water for a while. The canyon was really tall, really, really pretty area. And
it's pretty consistent. I mean, so when he says we went down this trail, basically the trail is the canyon bottom. So think of it as it's a wash, like a very rocky stream bed that's at the bottom of this canyon. So it's not really steep. It's very gradual, but most of the route was that. But I bet that it was a flowing stream for couple miles, maybe
Quite a ways.
Which was like pretty cool. And you could, that's where we started seeing more footprints, like shoe prints, which had to have been fairly recent, because you could kind of identify like the tread. And and
that was also where we were kind of all the way across this big drainage area, and there was a trail that teed in. So our guess was that people, where we dropped down, where I kind of said the trail got improved, another trail teed in from right there. And so there must be another access point to
it. Wasn't
inside
a ton of miles to like a dirt road from that point. So
maybe one day we'll have to come in from that side of it, or
be interesting.
But prior to this, just a little background story too, we knew that there wasn't any rain in the forecast, thankfully, because a little bit past that, we got into full slot canyon. Big, I mean, not like super narrow slot canyon. At its narrowest points, maybe 10 feet across, but most of the time, 15, 20 feet across at least. but I don't even know. Maybe I didn't know there was any slot canyon in this particular area, like at least like that. I thought it'd be more like the stuff we'd already come through where, yeah, it's narrow and whatnot, but you could climb up on shelves and different things. But we ended up entering into that, and there was probably 4 to 5 miles, I don't know, roughly, of just slot canyon for miles, just winding through. Really, really cool experience. Ty, have you ever been in slot canyon like that, or what was your feeling on that?
Not like that. I mean, I've done one hike, the Canaryville Falls, where there's some slot canyons and stuff, but I haven't gone for that long, and especially just seeing like endless amounts. Like once you really got into it, and like there was no exit, it was awesome.
Yeah,
that was really interesting, and because what I was thinking about earlier when we started today was, when you look at the map of that, what we were walking in, when you look at it on a map, looked almost identical, looked hardly any different than places that we walked that were not a slot canyon at all. So what I'm getting at is just by zooming in on a phone map and even looking at the contour lines and understanding contour interval, like there is just not much difference between what was slot canyon and what was not slot canyon. I was pretty surprised by that, and especially for how long that was, just because it really did not look much different on the topographic lines than those more open canyon bottoms that we walked through before and after that. Just not much difference, which is really, it's kind of interesting and cool, but like something to keep in mind to anyone planning like a desert hike. Be really lean on the side of caution, because I would say, like in a flash flood, you die in that canyon. Like you're dead. Like there's no surviving that. There was sheer wall for miles and no way to escape. So if you're looking at a route and looking at contour lines on a map and saying, okay, well, yeah, this canyon looks like this and these contour lines look just almost the same, you get stuck in that. If there's rain, anywhere around there, like could potentially be a very, very dangerous situation. And I thought about that, and there was no rain anywhere in the forecast, which is good, because that's one where it was a bit of an unknown. And
we would have been turning around, and it would have taken us way longer to get back out the same way. I mean, yeah, because we watch the weather forecast, especially going into a desert like that. If we'd got to that slot canyon, not knowing enough context, and if there was any rain projected, there's a good chance we would have had to turn around and just duplicate that whole.
We would have been hiking in the dark. I mean,
we did.
Well, I mean, like, dude, like for hours, at that point. But yeah.
So slot canyon was really, really cool. Got through that, teed into the main canyon that we'd then be hiking back up. Now we're kind of hiking back up towards the vehicle. Got into that canyon and basically started to just try to plan, well, how far do we have to go before we can pitch our tents? And that canyon was deceptive. I mean, I know that towards the end of the day, the miles get longer. Like the first couple miles out of camp, man, you're all fresh, everything's good. And then like the last miles before camp, things can drag out. And I was really feeling it in that canyon, where we hiked what felt like was for 45 minutes. And then Brigham's like, all right, I think we should get up to this point. And I'm like, we're not at this point. Like, I'm pull out my map. I'm like, no way. Like, we've only gone this far on the map. Like, what is going on here? So we did. We ended up, deciding to push to put ourselves in a little bit better position for the next day, because we're trying to do what we thought was going to be around 10 miles to get back to the car, 8 to 10 miles or so. So we needed to get in a position where we were about that far from the car. And so we did hike a little bit in the dark. So Ty got his first taste of a plus 20 mile day of backpacking while carrying a lot of water, and we don't know what else was hidden in the sack.
Yeah, there were still dude wipes.
Look,
There were still dude wipes.
I brought 12. That was it. That was my toiletries. We were good. Don't worry, I sacrificed
17 pounds of water.
Yes, that's true, right? 7 or 8 times 2.2. You're probably 18 pounds of water when you were full.
Yeah. Well, I remember when we were scrambling up, you guys, there was one part where you had to take off packs and throw them up.
Gosh.
I remember Tayson was on top of the rock. It was my turn to go up and scramble up. So I took my pack off and threw it up there, and he grabbed it. And it was just an immediate like, holy cow, how much do you have in this? And I will say, you know, as an experienced hiker and a good boss, he did tell me to dump out water because there was going to be other places to fill up. I was on survival mode, and I thought I was just going to have to, you know, hands and knees it back to the truck. And so I didn't want to dump out any of that precious water.
When I picked up your pack to lift it up on that rock and move it over, set it down, you were in the 40-pound range, I would say, for sure. Like, and to me, getting to that level is like shockingly heavy. Like, so I had like a real like shocking experience when I lifted your pack up. Like, oh. First I didn't say holy cow. No, they just put it that way. I was like, dude, you cannot do this. Like, this is insane. I don't know what you have in here, but it feels like rocks. You know, it was really, really, like, actually where my mind went was 2 years ago, year and a half ago, when we were on the Colorado Trail. We ran into this guy who legit had like a 60, 70 pound pack. He had everything you could imagine.
And that dude didn't he say he was like packing like 12, 13 liters of water? Cause he's like, I just didn't know. I don't know, you know, I mean.
Yeah. And then like, he had made it, we were passing him on day 2, right? Like halfway through day 2, he'd been on the trail for like a week to get to the same mileage number, right?
Oh,
like, it had slowed him down that much. Anyways, we picked that pack up. It was like when we passed that guy, he got his pack off. And when I picked your pack up, that's where my mind went. Like, I went straight there like, holy crap, is this like as heavy as that dude's pack? Yeah, very, very, very heavy. And we'll have to circle back to maybe what you learned from this whole experience at the end. But yeah, 20-mile day. By the end of it, you were really feeling it, and you were feeling it in your feet a lot with blisters. Maybe walk us through. We get to camp. We set up camp. We found a really good camp spot. There was no winds down in the canyon, which is really nice.
Great.
So we set up and started kicking our food, and Ty didn't really want me to be hungry, so he kicked off his shoes and started peeling back layers. And what did we find?
Yeah, so, I mean, really, my body was feeling pretty fresh. It was just my feet were hurting, and I couldn't figure out why. And a little bit of a backstory, right before this hike, I decided I was going to wear just some mid-top boots for a little bit more ankle stability, just in case. Those boots are also Gore-Tex boots, so it keeps your feet nice and hot. You have a really heavy pack on, putting in a lot of miles, and I was just feeling rubbing. But I normally am not one to blister. And when we got to camp, and like I could feel something in my sock. And so I told Tayson, I was like, hey, I bet you I'm bleeding right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, you bet. And I bet you 20.
It was like $20. Yeah. And so, yeah, moment of truth came, took off my sock, and found out there was like just a pretty gnarly, like 3-inch blister on my right foot. And it was completely torn open, just wet, nasty. It was looking really rough.
Yeah, at what point is the blister like just covering the entire bottom? You're probably getting close.
Oh, so that night it was just like a 3-inch, and you know,
Did it was bigger the next day.
Oh yeah, nice. I got it all the way across the pad of my feet.
Jeez, dude.
The good thing is you know, Tayson came prepared, and also when I took my left sock off, I didn't think there was a blister on that one. There was a giant blister. It just didn't pop yet.
Yeah, it looked like the same size.
So, yeah. And then all my toes were blistered up and everything. And so
let's talk for a second about Gore-Tex versus non-Gore-Tex boots in these environments, right? So the benefit of having a Gore-Tex boot in sand, because these are very sandy conditions, is you keep a lot of sand out of your shoe. which is pretty beneficial. The con, though, is because there's that waterproof membrane in the boot, you can't vent. You generate a lot more sweat. You generate a lot more heat. It'd be like walking all day in a rain jacket. Even if it was just a rain jacket, it shuts down all breathability, and it's like walking in your own personal sauna, essentially. And so there's times and places, I know some people that prefer to hike in Gore-Tex boots in these sandy conditions. What I would probably say about that, though, is it would be really hard to walk in Gore-Tex boots or shoes, trail runners with Gore-Tex, if you're doing 20-mile days and if you're not ultralight.
Yeah, I think the pack weight, the distance, I think the terrain as well. I'd say at least maybe half, maybe a little less than half of the miles were what you would not consider trail miles. I would consider them off trail, just walking on baseball to football size rocks.
Yeah, river.
Probably 10 of those miles was walking on stuff like that. So you got a lot of extra weight. You've got a bad ankle, so you're unstable. You got a lot of heat, a lot of moisture. It was just kind of, I think, a perfect storm for you.
Yeah, did it for the ankle support, though. Ankle didn't give out. That's the important part.
Next time we'll just tape your ankle.
Yeah. Oh, that's for sure happening.
Yeah, I mean, that trip, it was not easy on the lower leg. So like I've been kind of out of training as much. I haven't been training as much lately. And so that trip was a true testament to my ankles and my shins and my calves and stuff, because just so much uneven terrain. And walking in river bottoms is rough because there's so many, rounded rocks from being in the river bottom. And I was definitely feeling it in my feet, ankles, shins, calves. So to also come in with a pre-existing ankle injury, that was definitely on my mind a lot throughout the day. I'm like, man, if I feel like this, Ty's got to be really killing, so kudos to you for the grit there, and making it through that day. But yeah, that night, really nice. We stayed out a while, talking and eating and relaxing. Again, the stars were really, really exceptional out there, even in the bottom of a massive canyon like that. It was the canyon we teed into. I mean, essentially, it still is a slot canyon. You really couldn't have got out of it. It just wasn't narrow. So it's like you couldn't get out of the canyon, but it's more like 100 yards across or 50 yards across, so a lot more spread out. But really, really pretty out in there. And again, had a great night. I mean, we're talking lows around 40 degrees, which most of us were in 30-degree bags, and so we were toasty and just really quite comfortable. So, I mean, no words in Ty's mouth. He's still figuring a few things out, sleeping on pads and getting, used to that. I mean, and that's one thing to note, I guess, just to give some context to. I've had conversations with people where they're like, even when they have a lot of help and they've spent a lot of nights on trail, they're like, man, I just didn't sleep that great. I think you have to realize that you'll never sleep, as far as I'm concerned, at least, and people that I circle and talk with, you're never going to sleep like you're at home on your 10-inch to 14-inch mattress with your perfect pillow in a climate-controlled home. All of these kinds of things. You can't really replicate that in the backcountry, although we will do our best to continue trying to create those situations. So context-wise, most of us, at least me and Brigham, if I sleep, I would say this, if I sleep 3 straight hours without needing to like roll over or kind of wake up to roll over or something like that, I consider that like a really good night. Usually for me, between 1 and 2 hours, I'm needing to kind of roll over, shift around just a little bit. I'm a side sleeper, so I get a little more pressure on my shoulder. So with that kind of context, Ty, how did you sleep?
Yeah, surprisingly pretty good.
Yeah, you were tired.
Yeah, and I think that was really it. The first night I had some struggles just because the sand honestly was just at one point I woke up and I had so much in my mouth. Like I had to like rinse it out and spit out the sand. And so, but I just kept that one to myself because, it's part of the fun. You just got to learn and take it. But the second night, I normally only sleep a few hours a night, and I got like 5 hours unbroken, and it was crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
So
That's pretty good.
yeah, I was a little tired.
Only got up 5 times to pee and you're good.
It was like 3 times.
Mm-hmm. How much water did you have to start off this second morning?
Second day I had,
Started with 8 from that spring.
yeah, I think I was at 4.5.
To hike out with.
Because I had, I don't know, about a liter and change. And then I had 3 liters in bottles.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot because we could see 2 1.5-liter size, the big smart water bottles on the outside of your pack that were still full to the brim.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, me and Brigham were like down to our last like single liter bottle.
Yeah.
And I knew also, which I had tried to tell him, that there was more water about a mile or 2 out of camp. So anyways, we got up earlier, about 6 a.m. the next day, started hiking by 7 or earlier, and started heading out of the area. Got up a little bit farther. There was a little bit of water. I ended up filtering just 1 more liter just to make sure I had enough to get back to the truck. I knew that it was kind of a hot, dry section out. A lot more open, a lot less shade. And asked Ty if he needed some. He said, no, I got about 7 liters extra right now, so don't worry about it.
It took everything in my body to not filter any. I was ready to get another. I was like, what's another 2 liters, really?
He's got water anxiety. It's something we gotta work on. Yeah, I mean, that second day, just cruised out of the canyon. It was really, really pretty. I don't know. I mean, there wasn't too much exciting, I guess, that happened. It was a little bit farther, I think, than we thought, and at our speed. So we ended up taking about an extra hour over what we were kind of originally planned it would take us to get out of there, but still made really good time. I don't know. Any thoughts on that last day of hiking? Again, we ended up covering 10.5 or so miles. I want to say we broke 10, which rounded out the trip somewhere around 42 miles. I want to say. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that specific day before I just start grilling Ty on what he learned from the trip?
It was nice.
I'm ready for the lessons.
Yeah, I think everyone is. So, all right, Ty. So you've done it now. You've done a bigger mile day. You talked the whole time about being interested in the OV 100-mile challenge hike that we do in the summer. You kind of kept asking like, "Am I proven yet? Can I go yet?" And me and Brigham are like, "You're showing a lot of grit, but there may be still some lessons to be learned, So, getting through the entire hike now, what are the big takeaways for you?
Not hiking in Gore-Tex for sure. The blisters, that was a really big issue. Thankfully, with the tape and everything, I mean, I can push through the pain. I am really glad though that I didn't have like sand getting in my shoe and just making it even more of a mess.
Once you have a pop blister, you had to introduce a lot of sand. It sucked.
Yeah. And so that was one. And then obviously water and also knowing my maps. Like those kind of go hand in hand. Like if I've seen and really trusted you when I should have, that there was water and everything, like I could have cut back on a lot of water and a lot of weight. Same with meals. I didn't know how meal structure really went like on the hikes because I'm new. I don't.
We don't stop and cook food. We do non-cooked lunches, I guess you could say. Usually trying to just eat quicker, be efficient when we know we're covering 20 miles a day or anywhere near that. I mean, just in general, I never cook lunch. Usually lunch is kind of the opportunity to eat something a little more normal. So we'll bring meat and cheese and tortillas or things like that. But Ty wasn't aware of that. So he brought like
I had
peak meals.
Yep. 3 extra peak meals, just waiting, just extra weight.
I should have brought this up to you, but you can cold soak those to my knowledge. Like if you would just put water in like maybe an hour before lunch, It would have been cold, but it would have been rehydrated.
Still something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But between that and just learning a lot about cutting weight, just small little tips and tricks, like seeing you guys portion out your daily like snacks and carbs and calories.
How many pounds of gummy bears did you bring?
All right, I'll be honest. I brought 6 pounds of gummy bears.
It was 6
It
pounds?
was 6 pounds. I looked at the pack.
Yeah, you never even said that, dude. I was expecting like a little Ziploc sandwich
I
bag.
had 3 of the quart-size sandwich or quart-size bags full. The reason why,
No.
I heard rumors that Brigham really likes gummy bears. And I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to be just the workhorse. I'm going to pack some extra gummy bears for him, make Brigham like me a little bit. And then, you know, it didn't turn out that way. I came home.
Yeah, I don't think I got a single gummy bear, man. What the?
I offered multiple times, but I did weigh my gummy bears when I got home because I read a book about lightening up.
We gave him some required reading after the trip.
Yeah. And I finished with 4 pounds and 12 ounces of gummy bears. So
Finished.
So you
yeah,
came
so
home.
I came home with an extra 4 pounds of gummy bears.
All right. Dude, that's as much as my sleeping bag, my tent, and my pad.
Yeah.
And carried it in gummy bears.
Hey, you never know. I would like to preface, I'm diabetic. I need sweets. That was my argument between you.
Sure.
So many
You
pounds
need
of gummy
sweets to be
bears.
some diabetic, or you need sweets once you're done.
Yeah. I have some commentary, but I want to let you express anything else you learned or
What about water? Because here you're drinking gallons, but out there you didn't drink as much. Why do you think that was?
Yeah, so a lot of it, so for the first day, for example, I have this really bad habit. And if I'm traveling out to a spot to get to hiking and everything, I do things the opposite way you should, and I dehydrate myself. And then when I get to the spot, I feel like I could rehydrate myself in about 10 minutes and then go on walking.
so.
I don't know.
Pause.
Feeling.
We'll just
For this,
hit pause right there. So
I know this is wrong.
okay.
I want to make sure you know, I know this is wrong and it's not how it should be.
Well, but what do you know is wrong? Because we're
You
gonna
should be rehydrating the night before.
Okay, yeah. So there's no such thing as rehydrating in 10 minutes. So just so you know, like you or anyone else, if you want to do this, and so the reason that what I understood as you put it is the reason you quote dehydrate yourself is so you don't have to stop and pee on the car ride there, right?
Correct. Yep.
So you're, I would say, underhydrating yourself or deliberately trying to not have to stop and pee. But your so-called method is to then rehydrate yourself in 10 minutes, which isn't a thing.
Penny.
You can't hydrate your body in 10 minutes. Just doesn't work that way. But anyway,
Which is why I think the idea of a catheter came up many times for you. And I think that probably needs to be his trail name. It's just catheter.
It's true. Yeah, I'll admit to that one.
Okay, so why didn't you drink as much on trail, do you think?
So I just have really bad water fear, like of just potentially running out. And I know ideally you want to have
I feel like you could have drank in the same amount. You just didn't.
Easily. Yeah. I had to I was setting alerts on my watch. So every 2 miles, I would let myself have about 6 ounces of water, which I know is also less. But I was like, okay, this is enough to hydrate me. So I knew I came with the bladder and I knew I could take about 6 decent gulps throughout that 2 miles or 3 every mile. And I would be fine. To make sure water ratio was all good. And
so now we know you can survive without that much water.
Yeah.
Now maybe you've proven that to yourself that you don't have to have 2 gallons of water a day.
It's true.
That's good.
I don't have to.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
There's wants and there's needs, right? So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But the water burned me pretty good. Also proper footwear. If I would have just taped my ankle, I think that would have been a lot better and been in my normal trail runners. Could have sacrificed some ankle support, but I think if I was going the pace that I was going.
Well, there's the dilemma too. When you're carrying 40 pounds, you might need a little more ankle support.
Yeah.
So the heavier your pack is, the more ankle support might matter. So as you get your pack weight down, it'll be easier to to have less ankle support. I know you had an injury, which was still why we would consider taping it, but just for those listening, that correlates, right? I also wear boots with ankle support when I'm out hunting because I have a heavier pack because I have to carry a lot more stuff, and that adds up. So like there's a correlation there to just note. But so footwear.
Yeah, I don't need 2 pounds of dude wipes.
How many of the 12 did you use?
3.
Okay.
So I rationed it like 4 a day just in case things got Western.
Okay.
So,
But you also had enough water. I mean, I'm going to get you a little bidet nozzle, you know what I mean? And then maybe that'll help your fear of dude wipes also.
Yeah. Well, and that was an oversight. I thought I brought normal toilet paper and I didn't. And right before we left, I saw
on our site.
Yeah, like I was double checking my pack right before we left, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't bring this." And just in case, I mean, no one wants to hike without socks, so I figured.
So, did you throw any full roll of toilet paper?
No.
Okay,
that's
a common thing is people bring an entire roll of toilet paper.
Yeah. No, I ended up those dude wipes are actually just out in my car, just as like an emergency thing. And so I just like pulled them from my
emergency driving around.
You never know.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
Yeah. I mean, things come up. You eat gas station sushi. You never know.
All right, so we got gummy bears, we got water, we got footwear.
Yeah. Mapping, making sure I know the routes, know the plans, things like that.
We wanted to do a test, but it got too busy for us to do this test. Ty has T-Mobile, so now he's on Starlink. So you were texting, and I don't know if you ever placed a call, but we kind of wanted to try placing a call out there.
Yeah.
But that was really interesting for us because, our phones were useless, mine and Brigham's.
Yeah.
We have Garmin inReaches, but Ty was able to message whatever he wanted off of his phone via Starlink. The one downside is it was burning a lot of battery.
Yeah. Yeah, it does go through battery pretty quick, but it was nice. I mean, I'm a pro get away from, if I'm in the wilderness, I don't want to be on my phone, but the option to just like text my wife or text someone if something happened or anything. And you do have an SOS button just from that. So you have kind of 2 safety measures with the inReach and the phone.
You also don't have data though. Like you couldn't have quoted your own maps.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think let's save that conversation a little bit because there are some interesting pros and some interesting cons from that opportunity now of using a cell phone, right? Like there's some cost benefits, but and they're in an emergency situation, being able to actually call someone would be really valuable. But the disconnect factor, at least for me, it would kind of conflict, right? So maybe we'll break that down in a future episode and kind of talk more about that. But it was an interesting thing to be on a trip now with someone who actually had the ability to, when we were out of the canyons. So let me very, very much specify that. We were in canyons, slot canyons, where there wasn't a chance really of getting any messages out through Garmin or a phone.
Yeah, the phone, just like the inReach, it's still having to pick up a satellite.
Yeah.
So if the phone can't pick up a satellite, you don't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we were in the canyon, I had like a 2-minute window to do something, and it's usually takes about 1.5 minutes to actually send a text. And so,
okay. Any other takeaways top of mind for you?
Tell your boss about injuries.
Yep, there's a few minor things that we didn't communicate that well on, as far as getting you some trail info prior and some things like that. But also the lesson is, come asking, right? If you don't have it, it's your responsibility to get those maps and to, or even on the way down, probably could have still downloaded the maps and had some info. Just trying to think of anything else on this trip. A lot of cactus with barbs on the end, even. There were some gnarly.
Yes. Yeah. There's cactus. Those cactus are pretty interesting. So they look like a prickly pear type cactus. So they have a really stout, long, like 2-inch long thorn. I don't know what you call it, needle. The ones that you can like really see sticking out from all the cactus. but they apparently also have these like hair like thickness shorter needles that shoot out. They shoot out from the cactus, like at the base of the thick needle. And so like if you just bump one of these cactuses, like you think that it's the big stout needle that you want to watch out for, which you do, but yeah, it was crazy. Like I had a couple of those shoot through my like 2 layers of clothing. You can't see them because they're like the thickness of a hair, but they have a barb on them. And yeah, those are pretty interesting.
Interesting is a good word for fun and not painful at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that covers it. Overall, I thought it was an incredible trip. We did put in a few more miles than I originally thought, but it was good. It's just like with anything. Like people hear maybe sometimes some of the mileage we do, and they're like, I don't want to do that kind of mileage and all those kinds of things. But if you look back on that trip, and given some of the constraints, because we all have constraints, like you can't just live on trail. Like what would you cut out of that trip? It's like you couldn't really cut out anything. You wouldn't want to cut out it. Like I wanted to see everything that I saw at least, right? So,
Yeah.
We could have done the upper Ranger Trail and then turn around and hike back out. Well, then we would have only saw the upper Ranger Trail. We wouldn't have saw the Slot Canyon. We wouldn't have.
Yeah, we got like a pretty good, I'd say a good broad spectrum of like the terrain, just from the route. So because we got to hike at the bottoms of the canyons, we got to hike up on the shelves that, kind of traverse around the bottoms of the canyon. And when you're on that shelf, the scenery is completely different. You have big spanning vistas, but you can just see every little canyon out there. Well, some of them you can't even see, like when you looked across, you'd probably not really know that there's a real deep slot canyon that just cuts down the middle of that. But yeah, it was nice, good variety of scenery and terrain.
Yeah. So speaking of mileage, right now our OV 100 mile challenge the registration is still open. So if you want to go do a bucket list hike similar to what we just did, where this is a 40-mile one, obviously you'd have to do a couple or a pair of these to hit the 100-mile mark. But if you want to do something like that, now is a great time to sign up for the 100-mile challenge. And the 100-mile challenge, we break down training, we break down how to get rid of your dude wipes out of your pack and carry the right amount of water, trail planning, contingency plans. We go through a lot of the education side. Week by week, you have a workbook that you can just work through and make it really concise and broken down so that you can go plan and execute similar hikes to these. There's also just a phenomenal community in there that are all really, really positive. We do live streams. We do a handful of things in there. And then obviously, for those of you that haven't heard about this yet, the price of registration is actually cheaper than the stuff we give you. So we give you a Turn merino wool hoodie this year. We sell those for $85, and registration is only about $60. So, and that's just one piece of the many. If you finish, we give you finisher prizes, t-shirt this year, etc. So if you want to do something like this and you just want, whether it's the community to do this with, whether you want to sync up with us, whether you want to just make sure you don't forget something, in terms of planning and executing the hike or even training, now's a great time to sign up for that. The registration for this is only open in the springtime, because after that, it's time to, start planning and training and doing all the things so that you can go execute that. So now's a great time. Go check it out. The OV 100 mile challenge. It's one of my favorite things that we do here at Outdoor Vitals. It's really powerful. So yeah, check that out while registration is still open. With that, though, I think that's a pretty good recap on the trip. If you've not sent in any questions for the Q&A podcasts that me and Brigham have been doing, make sure to do that, where we'll go into more detail specifically on the listener questions and things that you guys want to know that we can help answer. Make sure to be sending those in. You can just send those straight into our support team and just say, hey, this is a question for the podcast. And that'll probably be the next or one of the next episodes that we do here. But with that, make sure you guys are subscribed, share this episode if you found value in it, and we'll catch you on a future episode.